In today's episode of the Pathfind Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Nicholas Cossette, and he is the head of growth and operations at Matador. And Matador is a customer engagement platform, that essentially helps you to sell more by generating or facilitating conversations with potential customers. And today we're going to be learning how Matador is doing that, who's using Matador, and who can benefit the most, and also how Nicholas is thinking about growth for the company. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. Thanks for the invite. And I'm actually looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Very cool. Yeah, give us that, 360 overview. What is Matador all about?
Great. So Matador is basically an SMS first marketing automation platform. One thing we quickly realize, like when it comes to communication or just overall engagement, is that text communication, SMS actually outperforms email marketing as well as like phone calls. And like we realized that there was a huge opportunity, mostly for retailers, to engage with their contacts through SMS. So that's what we're all about.
Very cool. So you mentioned mainly retailers, so is that stores and shops? Is that e-commerce shops? Like who's leveraging the platform?
Good question. So as we speak, we decided to attack one very big vertical, which is retail automotive. To be a little bit more specific, we mostly work with car dealerships. Most of them are facing a challenge where they have to deal and manage a lot of incoming inquiries. So if you put yourself in the shoes of a car retailer, you will receive inquiries from your OEM, the manufacturer, from your website, obviously, but also from third-party marketplaces, such as Auto Trader, to give you an example. So in their case, they have to deal with all those different inquiries. And the difficult part is basically to get in contact or to engage with anyone submitting an inquiry. And the reason being is that as a customer, when you're ready to shop, you might be placing maybe 5, 10 different of those inquiries to several retailers. So it creates a bottleneck for the retailer. And this is where we decided to leverage SMS as well as marketing automation to help those retailers.
Very cool. Makes a whole lot of sense. Who within the car dealerships would be sort of, be most interested in getting Matador on board? Is that like a business owner, or is that more like a head of kind of like sales? Like how are these folks structured and who is bringing it on board?
So generally speaking, it's either the dealer principal, business owner, or even like a general manager. They need to make their stores more profitable, and they are looking for solutions, Matador being one of them. The second use case that we have would be a marketer or someone responsible of the lead management that like basically works and operate on a day-to-day within those different tools. And that person will bring that to his manager.
Makes sense. And how would these folks hear about Matador? Like, in other words, what's the client acquisition channels that you guys are leveraging? And sort of how would this develop, from current stages, and how do you see it developing forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when you start like a platform, a product, or even a company from scratch, it's actually difficult to get that type of inbound traction. Obviously, like you wish that you'll publish a few added value pieces of content and that people will find you. But guess what? Like everyone's competing for the same topics. So unless like you have like huge advertising budgets to drive traffic to the website, it's challenging. So what we decided to do is basically a different approach. So we got started with a sales-led approach. Like we knew at the beginning that we were providing like value. So we've kind of like superpowered the organic growth and the word of mouth with referrers or like people in the industry that knew the platform, and we would compensate them with like a commission or a portion of the revenue, and that worked very well. And when we're very early, what we need to also drive is feedback. We need to learn from our existing users. And that's the reason why we have not started with like an inbound or a marketing strategy. We actually waited a few months to make sure that the platform was there, that we would be able to factor in all the different feedback. And when we knew that we were providing enough value to justify an interesting price point, this is where we started deploying marketing.
Makes sense. Okay, so you guys are kind of per phase of the company, really nicely adapting there. Like, how do you then today, as a head of growth, how do you think about the website? What role does it play in your perspective?
One thing I like about the website is that actually, generally speaking, you will actually play a significant role depending of the customer journey. So say like we're having that type of sales-led approach. So I'm a salesperson, I'm contacting you, Lucas, and I tell you about my story, my company. Like you will have that first interaction, first touch point with me as a salesperson. But most likely, you'll take some time to validate, like to look at the website and to see, oh, are these guys credible? Like, who are they working with? Those type of things. And the same applies like for existing users. They will look at the website to find resources or content, or like they might have questions, they might be looking for specific answers. So either we're like upper funnel and like someone's actually looking for information on industry topics or trends, like the website can actually be applying to them for that specific content, and they might not even be considering your product. So like I think a well-structured website would be able to like address a lot of different questions through the entire customer journey.
Yep, I see. And where do you, as a head of growth, where do you think sort of is the current strengths of the website versus where do you see room for improvement, or even and help us maybe understand also a little bit what the role of the head of growth really means for Matador, because head of growth can be very sales driven, it can be very marketing heavy. Like, you know, where do you sit? And then with that eyes, how do you think about the website?
A great question. So like from a growth perspective, the idea is also to have like an overview of the business, because let's be honest, like when you're a startup, like growth mean basically building the company or making sure that we address all the different questions. So it's not necessarily only marketing, while like a head of growth in a larger company might only be micro growth or like micro optimization on landing pages. Or so like in our case, if I can talk about precisely our startup, the growth was basically to find out how we can gain more clients. So that was sales led at the beginning, and now like we're actually just brought in someone to take over like part of my responsibilities, and that person will be overseeing everything marketing and growth, because like I like seeing growth as part of the operations. Like you need to be able to bring the right people in the right expertise at the right time, depending of where you are in the company.
Yep, makes a whole lot of sense. Interesting. Maybe last question on sort of like a growth function before we're moving on, learning more about yourself. How do you go about figuring out why people do or do not convert? Let's say they come to your website as an example. You know, what you guys are doing to figure out like why people do sign up or not get in touch?
Like one thing that we do a lot is basically just like basic research. So we've identified our different personas. We show them variations of the website, and we ask them like what they'd like to accomplish on that website, like what they feel that they can get out of that call to action, that page. So we can generate a lot of like insights. On top of that, like obviously we have all those usual suspects. So like search console, analytics, so all those different type of tracking tools. But in our case, we don't have significant volume, so it's difficult to draw conclusions based out of like a limited number of sessions or like clicks. So we need basically to balance those.
Makes sense. Now let's switch gears a little bit. You as a head of growth, like there's so much content out there on how you could be approaching to help a startup to grow, right? Like there's so many techniques, strategies, methodologies. Where do you like to read? How do you like to educate yourself in order to keep on learning while, you know, also bringing that into the company?
My learning style is mostly going through books, but I've worked with people that they subscribe to learning sessions, webinars. Like I'm not that type of person that consume a lot of video. I prefer to read. But I think if learning is personal, so you need to identify how you learn and what type of channels work best with you. I've worked with others that they need actually to perform and to do the work. so they learn through experience. So as long as you understand you're learning as an individual, I think you need to do so.
Cool. I have some rapid fire questions for you to wrap it up for today. Are you ready for those?
I am ready.
Very good. What's the last book that you read?
The last book that I read, it was probably the book on the onboarding from the product-led people. I can't remember their name though, not Wes, but the other person.
Okay. What's one single thing?
Product-led onboarding. Yeah.
Okay. What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
As we speak, we're big into the overall customer experience. So we're in B2B, so we want to make sure that we address our client needs, but also the end client needs as the same time.
If there would be no boundaries in tech, what is the one thing you would fix for your role?
If there would be no boundaries, I like data, and I like to share data. So if we can get a shared space for a learning center, you and I are not competing. So what tomorrow, because of technology, I would be able to access all of your data, your insights, your takeaways. That would be amazing.
Yep, makes sense. It's interesting actually. If we do a bit of a time travel for the last question, we go back to the days of University of Montreal, Montreal. Now you're leaving off of education. What's the one advice you would give yourself?
That's a very good question. I think we can actually learn a lot from others. So it's been difficult through the pandemic to maintain those type of networking events. So try to push myself a little bit to generate those type of interaction, a little bit like the one that we're having today.
Mm-hmm. And I want to give you sort of the last word for today's show. If people would be forgetting all that we discussed about Matador today, what's the one thing they should remember?
As we speak, there's actually a big trend in the industry, which is SMS marketing. So whatever the industry, make sure that you have an SMS marketing. That would be the good thing to remember for all of you.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on PowerFunk Presents, Nicholas.
Thanks so much, Lucas, for having me.